a dream come true. Me and you, whoa, teach me to talk. The podcast, take 2.
Hi, I'm Laura Mize, pediatric speech-language pathologist.
And I'm Macy Mize Usher, pediatric speech-language pathologist. And welcome back to our podcast, Teach Me to Talk, the podcast, take 2.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're a therapist and want to get CE credit for watching this podcast, the link is right there below to enroll. And we'd also like to ask you to subscribe and like the video so that our videos can appear in more people's feeds. All right, let's get to today's topic.
Yes.
This is the question that I think that we get most from parents, and it's always some version of, how can I get my kid to repeat words? I can't get my child to talk. And so I have talked about this and talked about this and talked about this, but we are going to talk about it again today because it's so important. We can answer that question a lot of different ways because we talk about a lot of different strategies here on the show, but the most important skill that you are ever going to teach a late talker is how to imitate.
Yes.
And nearly 20 years ago now, I wrote this method with 8 stages for teaching a child how to imitate words. And so what we're going to do today, I get a lot of questions, and again, I've taught this a lot, have even a lot of courses here on YouTube about this. We are going to do the super condensed version.
Yes.
So that if you are a parent and you just want to get the high points all in kind of one little package, you can do that. But most importantly, if you're a therapist and you want to share this information with parents, this will be a great podcast for you to forward, because we're going to run through these stages, give some examples, and then talk most importantly about troubleshooting, how to start, what exactly each stage looks like, and then those little hints to get you going with helping a child move through those stages more quickly. All right, so Macy, why don't you start and read through the specific levels of imitation for us?
And I think this is such an important question too.
It is, and it's one of the most common emails. We get hundreds of emails a day here at Teach Me to Talk. And there's always, the majority of them center around kind of this question. So it's a great topic for us to run through one more time.
All right, so there's 8 different levels. I'm just going to read those levels of imitation. So level 1, actions with objects. Level 2, we move on to body movements and communicative gestures. Level 3, nonverbal movements of the face and mouth. 4, vocalizations and play, so like your sound effects. 5, exclamatory words. 6, verbal routines. 7, familiar words. So this is where those single words start to come in, all the way on level 7.
Right.
And then level 8, short phrases. And so we're going to break these down too and explain these a little bit more. So let's start with number 1.
Number 1, so level 1 activities. And let me just say this, if you're a parent, you're like, I still don't quite understand what you're saying. All kids learn how to imitate. That's how kids learn almost everything, and especially how to talk. But what Macy said when she was reading through that, kids have to learn a lot of things before they're able developmentally to get to that place where they can really imitate your words. And so what I did with this, and what other speech pathologists try to do, we're breaking down everything. That why can't a kid do this? Oh, because he can't do this. Why can't he do that? Because he can't do the step that comes before. Why can't he do that? And again, there's a sequential process. So I broke these stages down. And so we're going to go one by one. And so when you were working with the child, though, and here's the kicker, you're going to figure out where that child can't imitate and start there to really strengthen that skill. But let's just review the whole set first, and then we'll go back and talk about those really specific things. So number 1,
helping a late talker learn to imitate actions with objects.
And so sometimes this is confusing to parents because they're thinking, hey, we're trying to get him to talk, but it looks like all you're doing is playing with this kid. But there's a method to all of this, and that's because it's going to be easier for that child to learn how to imitate with an object, with something that's visual out here that he can see, not something going on here with his mouth or even something, other kind of thing that he has to kind of think about. There's that visual representation. So let's talk about some examples of actions with objects.
And these are all things that you would do naturally with the object, right? So if it's a door, you would knock on the door. If it's a baby doll, you know, patting, kissing the baby, hugging that baby, removing a blanket from a hidden toy. That may not be something that you do naturally, but that's one of my favorite ones because of the, you know, big effect of I'm going to pull off that.
Exactly.
Patting hands on the table.
That's one of my favorite ones to do with a kid. And so if I can't get a kid to imitate, and again, you're not going to start way up there with words. You're going to start looking at a child's imitation skills down here and play. These examples that Macy's given, these are all very, very common first actions in play routines. So if you have a child who's really playing with toys, he's probably mastered this level already. So that's wonderful.
It is.
That's a big, big strength.
Yeah, it's really those cause and effect toys. So any kind of toy with a simple button.
Right.
Any kind of push the button toy.
And so your premise here is what? It's that you do the action with the toy. And then you are doing everything you can to make it possible that that child would want to imitate you. And so how you really need to do it when you're playing there is create that anticipation. And that's not only with your voice, but also with your body language. So if we were going to do this here with Macy, if she were the kid that we were working with today, and I wanted her to imitate, tapping the pen, you know, you're going to do whatever it is, and then you're going to look like, you know, wide eyes, that gasp, maybe that leaning forward. Again, that anticipation, like it's your turn to do this. And
5 seconds.
The full 5 seconds of wait time there to see if a child's going to do it. Now, what do you do if he doesn't imitate? You can reach over and take his hand and help him kind of get started, but you don't want to do too much helping because that makes the child prompt dependent.
No way.
And you do want his little system to be able to take over to do that. So here, this first little level is you do something with a toy or an object, and then you want a child to do it.
That's right.
And so after you do that, then you start to do things that maybe are unexpected so that you can see, what would that tell you there? You can see that a child really, it is really not just what would come next with that toy, but that he's really learned, I'm going to copy you.
And it's fun to copy.
Yeah, so things like instead of, say that you're working with a barn there or some kind of house. You know, your natural kind of thing would have been to knock on the door. But what if you knocked on the roof? Or what if you knocked on the floor? Or you did something else with that same little action that was a little bit unexpected. So with the baby doll, expected actions with the baby doll might be kissing the baby or hugging the baby. So you want to do something unexpected with the baby. So I might have put the baby up on my head.
Yeah, that's right.
Any kind of little thing to get a child to imitate that unexpected thing with that object, because that's when you know that he's really, really imitating.
I think that's a good point, the unexpected. First the expected come and then the unexpected, and then explaining, pausing, and, you know, to the caregiver, parent, mom, whatever. Hey, look, they're really mastered this step because they're doing this bizarre action that I'm doing right now.
And exactly. And that's how we know that it's really copying and imitating. And then what you always want to do as a therapist is tie that to the word. Tie that to imitating words. And so you would say, now we know he's paying attention to me. He's engaged with this. And he's playing, his little brain is working well enough to make his body do what he just saw you do. So it's a really, really important developmental marker. And it's sometimes one that we as speech language pathologists fail to explain the connection to parents when we're saying, we're working on this in play, but they don't even really know what you're talking about. So you've got to make that connection and say, this is where we start with teaching him how to copy words. We teach him how to imitate with actions, with objects, with those kinds of things. All right, that was level 1. Let's move on to level 2.
So level 1, help a late talker learn to imitate actions with objects. And now we're going to be helping a toddler learn to imitate body movements. And so the main difference between these two levels is the first one, you know, you're really using that visual toy, that object, and now we're going to start using our bodies. So personally, this is a lot more fun.
Yeah, I think it is more fun too. And again, it's where we've moved this imitation from out here to right here. We're going to start to do things here so that we can imitate and get it closer to being able to imitate things with your mouth as we move toward words. So let's talk about the simplest ones first. I think the simplest one to do is clapping.
Yeah.
So something like that, or jumping, or any of those big gross motor things.
The
are the
big movements.
Yeah, that I go for with kids. And so if I have a child who, again, has imitated some actions with some objects, but I think, oh, he's still not really watching me. He's still not really with me. This is where you're going to go next. And so I do the big things like seeing if he will imitate me running.
Yes.
So running across the room, jumping across, doing something, you know, hands up in the air, waving. So you can do a lot of that early gross motor imitation with just those little things, even maybe before you get to the structured games and stuff.
Sure.
Just those little single episodes of trying to imitate like that. A big one with toddlers is demonstrating animal movements. And so, you know, I'm going to...
That's what I was going to say.
Oh, really?
Those are my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the ones that you do with that?
Oh, the chicken wings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or galloping like a horse, or even, and kids love to get in that early kind of, I'm going to be the dog, or I'm going to be the kitty cat and kind of crawl around.
Yes.
And so again, you're taking that body movement and having them imitate that. So then the next thing that you do, still kind of with this, is that you can move that on to be shaped to be a communicative gesture.
Yeah.
So lots of natural things that a child will do in this category are going to be lifting his arms to be
that clapping again.
picked up. Yeah, clapping again, the gimme fingers, the shaking his head no, any little thing that you would do. But again, when you have a child that's not doing lots of gestures yet, back up to those earlier things that we talked about, like the clapping or the running or the giving five or any of those little basic body movements that a child, you could get a child going like that. And then still here at level 2 with imitating body movements and those early things that we can shape to gestures would be moving to those little songs and play routines that have those body movements built in. So my favorite first little thing here is if you're happy and you know it. So you can do, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet.
Anything.
Yeah, I like to do blow a kiss. I think that's a cute one to do with it. But any little body movement, and just have fun with that and see how many different kinds of body movements you can get a child to imitate. And then once a child is doing that, move to signs. So really simple signs. And again, all-purpose signs like more and please have gotten kind of a bad rap because kids can kind of get stuck there. But the problem isn't really with the child.
No.
When the child is stuck there.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's really that the adult hasn't really moved on and taught more signs. So be sure you're doing that. But again, this is something that I want you to really grasp. If you're a therapist or a parent, and you've been trying to teach your kid to imitate some signs and you won't do it, back up and teach these earlier body movements and communicative gestures first.
We had the cutest kid in our summer sessions that would do his thumbs up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was such a cute one too.
It's a cute one. And let me mention, I think we mentioned this in the last couple of podcasts, but when you're looking at teaching gestures and stuff, Amy Weatherby's 16 by 16 chart is just the best so that you can get some great ideas for gestures there.
All right, so level 1, actions with objects. Level 2, imitating body movements, gestures, or sign language. Number 3, helping a late talker learn to new actions with his or her face or mouth.
All right, so this is kind of controversial in our field because this is where we start to think about non-speech oral motor exercises. And basically that just means any kind of mouth movement that you're going to do that's non-speech, so that's without sound. So give us some examples of these, Macy.
So opening and closing your mouth like that, widening your eyes, your eyebrows, puffing out your cheeks, chomping your teeth, exactly.
And then you can move on to things like puckering your lips, you know, anything, again, that would be without sound. So sticking your tongue out, lateralizing your tongue, any kind of little movement like that. But let's talk about why this is controversial. I already said it. It's these kinds of movements are not necessarily required for some children when they are learning how to talk. And so some of our little guys that have markers for childhood apraxia of speech may not be able to do this level at all.
It might be too hard.
It might be too hard. And so I don't really use this level as I'm moving a kid up. I use this level, and we're going to talk about this when we kind of get to the end here in a minute, to kind of move them back so that if I've started too high with the kid and I'm not getting anywhere, this is where I might back up to this level. So any kind of little thing where a child is going to imitate something that you do here.
See, I like that you still included this within the chart because, again, when you're backing up, it's making things easier. So this really is a clear way to show that these are like the easiest first facial movements. And I think it's all about the intention and purpose, right? Like if this is what is more fun and motivating for the child, then yeah, go ahead and do it. But of course, we're not going to be forcing or really trying to, hands-on make that child smile or something. I know you're shaking your head, but I've seen it all.
I know you have. I know you have. But this level, again, is not it's not completely necessary for some kids, but for our little kids that have muscle tone issues, low tone or high tone, they may really need this level so that they understand I have a mouth and I can control it.
That's
so some of our little guys really don't have that kind of, they haven't really linked that together yet.
That awareness.
Yeah.
And so these are the easiest ones to start with.
Exactly. And so, again, you may not, if you think, okay, can my kid imitate actions with objects? Okay, yeah, he's got that. Can my kid get some body movements?
Yeah.
Okay, he's got that. And then you may not necessarily move on to this next level. You might bump on up. But again, what Macy and I were saying is if we have started with the kid up here and we think, oh, he has so many things that he's already doing at these higher levels, but we're not really getting anywhere, or not so many things, so few things, this might be where we kind of back up to and move on. So those are some examples of that. So any little funny thing you do with your mouth, you want a child to be able to imitate that.
So here at this level, real quick, the things, when I am working on this level, when I haven't skipped it, I think that these are more visual, kind of cues. And I like to use a mirror or even pull out my phone and do a phone, like your phone camera, or even record it and then watch the video again. I found that to be successful.
And so kids like that.
Yeah, kids really like that.
Yeah.
Of course, kids like it when you pull out your phone.
Then you...
or you're watching yourself in the mirror. Yeah.
I know, but it's great feedback, and they may not have even, again, made that connection with, oh my goodness, I can control my mouth in this way. All right.
So now we're going to move on to help a toddler learn to imitate those early vocalizations in play.
Now, we're not talking about words yet.
Not yet.
We're talking about things that you do with your mouth. And again, remember we said we're kind of walking up step by step, inch by inch to get up that developmental ladder. But these would be things with your mouth that you're moving that have a sound, but they're not quite words. And so when Macy and I were prepping the show, I said, they're not quite words. You can't spell it. And she said, what are you even talking about, Mom? And I said, things like, how do you spell that?
Yeah.
Fake cough, or a fake sneeze, or
panting like a dog.
Exactly, or snoring, or snorting like a pig. You can't really spell that, right? But these are vocalizations, and again, it's one step higher. Now you've put some sound with those mouth movements.
You're doing your voicing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so it does make it one little step harder. And so this is here's the thing. All of these steps are pulled from typical development, but in typical development, it's harder to kind of separate one from another, because these are the little things that infants start doing at like 6 to 9 months.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, yeah. So like the throat clearing, you start to kind of do that with the baby, and then a baby starts to do it, and then you may just be walking around the house, and then all of a sudden you hear the baby do that. And so they're starting that little vocal routine with you. And so the reason that we would, again, pull these little bitty baby steps out is when a kid isn't imitating words, isn't talking yet, we've got to figure out exactly where that breakdown occurs, meet that child there, and then strengthen that skill, because then conceivably, then he's going to be ready to move on and be ready to imitate those higher level things. All right, so other sounds here. Grunting as you try to open something, audible inhalation, so that's like a gasp, when you're excited. These are kind of the first little vocal things a lot of times that kids who have just been completely silent.
Yes.
These are the things that you try to get them to do
I'm
first.
laughing because I'm remembering a child that I saw that the mom came in and said, my child only grunts. And I thought it was more of the, like, when you see milk and they go, like that's how they were requesting. But actually the mom was super pregnant. And of course I can
relate.
I can relate to that right now.
36 weeks.
But anytime the child would get up off the floor, they would grunt because that's what the mom was doing. And so that was the only sound that child was doing, was grunting.
But it was imitation.
It was. That's why it was so great to explain that to mom. Look, though, they're imitating you. Yeah. That's hilarious.
That's great. So raspberry, or however you blow a raspberry, any kind of little thing that is a mouth movement, but there's sound associated with it there. And so that's going to be level 4. Lots of times I combine level 4 and level 5, so let's just kind of move on and talk about that. This is going to be that next little rung where, okay, now, let's back up to level 3 where we were saying that a child is going to imitate some nonverbal things here, just mouth movement. And then in level 4, there were things with your mouth, but we added a little bit of sound.
Yes.
Now we're going to add enough sound to make it like a word, almost. And so you can spell these words, and a lot of times parents are reluctant because they think, is this even a word?
Yeah.
So we're talking about things like animal sounds, like moo and ba and woof, woof, woof. And so again, it would be more word-like versus in that previous level where we use like panting.
Yeah.
That's not a consonant and a vowel. That's just the H there.
Right.
That consonant. So this is going to be where we get some sound combinations going. The great thing about this level is children are naturally attracted and motivated by these words.
Yes, they're fun words.
Yeah, so why don't you give us some examples of these?
As you're going down the slide, oh gosh, that's like the biggest one.
Yeah.
Yeah, boo-boo, yucky, yuck, I like to use this stage to expand phonetic inventory. And I may have had to Google before this show, am I talking about phonetic inventory or phonemic inventory? I'm talking about phonetic inventory. And what I mean by that is a lot of times I back up to this level, even if a child has words. Am I looking at those first 8 sounds, those typical bilaterals, those first sounds that should come in first? If they're missing some of those sounds, I go back to these really easier sound effects, the exclamatory words to build that phonetic inventory.
There you go. And let me just interject this. I was reading some research. I'm getting ready to go do a live event. And looking at some new research, the thing is the courses, we're going to do the day-long version of teaching the 11 skills. And one of the biggest indicators to tell if an autistic child is going to talk is looking at that consonant inventory. And actually, I guess that would be for all children, but this was specifically related to reading about kids who are autistic. But that is such a big predictor. And so I love that you're talking about how we can incorporate really practical ways to teach those new sounds. If you were working with an autistic kid, you're not going to have much luck sitting down and saying, okay, honey, now it's time for the imitation portion of our speech therapy session today. So I'm going to say a sound, and then I want you to say a sound. Here we go.
Any toddler, really.
Yeah, but that's not going to work,
No.
right? And so we've got to put it in context. And so these little
play noises.
Yes, yes.
Noises you use naturally in play.
Yes, yes. So that's going to be an easier way to kind of facilitate these sounds and make it more meaningful, make it a lot more fun.
Oh, yeah, for
and
you
make
too.
It, yeah, and make it a lot more likely that child will try to imitate you. And again, here with play sounds, you can't really phone this in. I mean, you are going to have to be in it and really modeling those sounds and making that a lot of fun so that a child would want to imitate you. And so remember what we talked about with that body language and just that whole, you're still going to keep that up, but you want to make your voice really, really excited here too.
With your volume, with exaggeration, making it longer, making it shorter.
Yeah, or, and like you were talking about volume, sometimes whispering. Yeah. Some of these things instead of, I tend to go loud on everything, but pulling it back is very engaging for lots of toddlers because that's not something that you would normally do or how you would normally talk.
Unexpected, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so that makes it a lot more fun. But I love this level of playing. And so when you're doing this, when you're working on these kinds of levels, you want to make sure that you are interjecting these kinds of things, whatever target it is that we're talking about with this, just as much as you would talk to a child. So instead of saying lots and lots of words, you know, here's the sheep.
Yeah.
The sheep says bye.
Right.
The sheep lives on the farm. The sheep is white and has soft wool. Don't do any of that. You know, you're gonna at this sound you would take, or at this level you would take the sheep and just, you know, oh, my sheep is gonna walk. Here we go. You know, whatever little sound you might do for that, you know, whether that's your horse or whatever. And then, you know, instead of, again, my point here is just keep those sounds going.
Yeah.
So, you know, you would do your ba, ba, ba. You would then maybe have pretend that he's going to drink and do some, and then pretend, you know, he's going to eat. It's so good. So just keep those little sounds going and model that throughout the play routine.
I think, too, these are easy for parents to include within, like, an eating routine.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, describing the food, yummy, yum, or yuck, you know.
Yeah, and so, like, the slurping sound that I just did, or the, you know, take a drink. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, that's a great one for kids to do. And again, that might have actually been maybe back a level
you could say,
there.
oh, yeah. That's what you could do. Oh, yeah.
But my point there with those mealtime routines is think about how many different little sounds can I model in this context.
Lots. It's easier to do than a mealtime routine.
Yeah, so that would be a great way to do it. Great way to do it. And you could also use this with vehicle play. And so do lots of little things, you know, vroom, 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 and
beep, beep.
Yeah, yeah. Boom, when they crash. Yeah, any little sound effect kind of thing right there. Dads and older siblings tend to be really great at this level too. So modeling those kinds of noises, and remember, you for a child to be able to do it, they've got to hear you do it a lot. So you can't just sit down, like we said, you know, with the cars and do one little, you know, boom and think that's going to get it. You're going to have to model these things over and over and over.
That's a good point.
Yeah, before a child would be able to imitate. Let me say this one more thing before we move on to level 6. Level 5 is most often where I start with kids with speech therapy.
Really?
Because, why do you think that is?
Is it because they're the most fun and they're the easiest to say?
Yes and no. It's because most of the time when kids come into therapy, they already have a few of these anyway. Don't you think that's true?
Prime the pump.
Yeah. And so a parent says, you say to them, how many words does your child have? And they might say, oh, he can say, uh-oh, and he does a tweet tweet for a bird, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that, okay, so what has that told you? That's told you this is where he's already living. This is where what he has already mastered or he's trying to do. So you want to meet him where he is. So when you get a kid, when you first get a kid for a referral, ask those kinds of questions, because if a mom is saying he already has these kind of little sounds and you already know that his play is pretty good, this is where you're going to meet him, because he already has mastered those. Conceivably mastered those prerequisites.
I actually have a lot of the opposite experience where they say, my child has 0 words. And I'm like, okay, let's start talking about some things. And then they'll list 4 or 5 on this specific level. And I'm like, hey, those count. Those count as words. We need to give credit for that.
Exactly. If you can spell it, you count it as a word. And so that's what I was meaning before with that previous level where we were just looking at level 4. You can't really spell brakes on a car, like, or, you know, what, you know, a brake sound that you would use. You can't really spell
a snort like a pig.
A snort like a pig, but you can spell, you know, whatever, moo, or, or a word like that. So again, this is the level where most of our little guys are when they get evaluated. So this is where I think, okay, this is my sweet spot. I'm going to start here at level 4 and level 5. And then you know how we've been saying we can back up. Then if you're not getting a lot of different vocalizations, you can't get anything new there, you think, oh, he hasn't really mastered those other little levels that come first. But this is kind of where I start, and then you know you can go forward with these next few things that we're going to talk about, or you realize, gosh, I got it back up. All right.
Okay, so moving on, verbal routines, automatic speech and verbal routines. So this is like ready, set, go, 1, 2, 3, or even like up, 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 up,
Yeah, exactly.
And down.
Yeah, and so certainly all of our little songs and games, and the thing about verbal routines, this is going to be any kind of word that is context dependent, that you say the same things at the same time in the same way over and over and over. So a child hears it and then he's able to complete it. And so with this you think about this as fill in the blank.
Yes.
And so Macy gave the example, ready, set, go.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to be the word that goes in there. So you were going to say these things and play these games and repeat yourself over and over and over so that a child hears it enough so that you're going to be able to stop and he's going to fill in that last word, because again, you've said it so much that it's become automatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you would hear, let's say that a child's favorite song that you sing every night before bed is Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And so you would start to set that up with your anticipatory body language, you know, for the child to be able to fill it in. And so you just start to sing, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little, and you pause there and wait to see if the child is going to fill it in. The kicker here is that you have got to have you have to use the routine enough so that the child learns it, and so that his little brain again is just going to kind of fill in that word. And sometimes when I've been using this with a child, it seems to me like it's as much of a surprise to the kid that they've said the word as it is to me or mom.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
I think that was the biggest thing learning this as a new therapist, is that I didn't model it enough maybe. So then I started doing it like 10 times within a therapy session and then starting to use the strategy fill in the blank.
Exactly. So don't just do it 1 or 2 times and see if a child's going to fill it in. You've got to use that routine over and over and over and over before it's even really a possibility that a child could be able to fill it in.
And of course, this is where it, Gestalts and scripts are artistic. I'm so pregnant. Autistic kids. Autistic kids really thrive here. Yeah, you take it away.
Exactly. So Gestalts and scripts. So Gestalts are a really big thing in our field right now with autistic kids. And so what are Gestalts? These are the little lines that they repeat from their favorite TV shows or books, or maybe they repeat something that you say all the time. And so this is why they work. It's because again, it's that concept that they've heard it enough and they like it enough so that they're going to be able to repeat it. And so this is how we're going to meet a kid where they are. And so if you are working, and the research is pretty clear that so many of our little friends who are autistic actually begin talking here. And so we hear those scripts, those chunks, before we're going to hear single words. And so, I mean, this goes right along with our continuum here in our theory.
That could be a whole other show.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that's level 6. After a kid is using words tied to specific context, so again, sometimes as a therapist, that's what you need to, you say, this kid's talking, but I don't really understand why I can't get him to imitate any single words. Go back and really think, oh, it's because these really are verbal routines for this kid. He hasn't really gotten to the point where he can pull that word out and use it spontaneously, or without all the other words that typically go with it. I mean, it's a holistic phrase. It's part of that. Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah.
And so now we're on to level 7. We're finally up to those single words, right?
So this is my biggest point that I always try to make with parents. Look at how much a kid has to learn before he gets to single words. And so you as a parent think, oh, this is where I'm going to start teaching him how to talk. No, he's got to have learned how to imitate all these other things. And look at the skill as imitation rather than I'm teaching him how to talk. If you can kind of help parents make that shift and think, okay, those words are what are going to naturally come next, but I can't get there until he's learned how to imitate these other levels first. If you will help a parent make that shift to, we're teaching imitation, we're not necessarily teaching words yet, that's going to help them make that shift. And so many times with parents, I don't have that original chart, I don't think we copied it, but with that building chart, let's just use it with this other chart that we're going to use, that we're going to talk about. Sometimes I will, the other chart that I use it is kind of this way, so let me do it this way. Sometimes I will take a marker and kind of even mark off the end of the chart where words and phrases and
Right.
say, we are nowhere near there. We're way back down here at level. Well, you might not say way back down here because you don't want a parent to feel bad, but we're back here. These are all the stages that we've got to get through. And so out of these 8 stages, words are number 7. So there are all these levels that have to come first. You know, that's
They have to.
Yeah, that's my point about that. So when we're finally here at level 7, this is where we're talking about imitating words without the context attached. So just those single words.
I like how you broke it down into nouns, favorite people, social words, verbs and action words, location words, descriptive words, and early pronouns. You kind of put that great into a category.
Yeah, and so what we're talking about here is when you're teaching a child new words, my brain has to have a way to categorize everything, and so we're kind of sometimes all over the place with teaching new single words, but we always want to make sure with our children that we are helping teach vocabulary that's functional, meaning that they can use it in their everyday words and everyday life. Yeah, it makes a difference, the kinds of words that you're teaching. And so I always kind of, when I'm at this level with a parent, give a little vocabulary list. We'll go ahead and attach this with a handout for the show for today so that you can have that. But these are just grouped with nouns. So these are our naming words. And the nouns predominate the vocabulary of all talkers, whether they late talkers or timely talkers or whatever you want to call it. Nouns are usually going to be the biggest category there. And a sub kind of category that would be names for favorite people. And so these are going to be mama, daddy, whatever your sibling names are, pet names are, your grandparent names are, those kinds of things, plus favorite characters, so whatever their screens, whatever they're watching on their screen, so those kind of characters. Then social or function words, and so we think about these as please and more and thank you and hi and bye and sorry, you know, all those little kinds of words. You might put your exclamatory words in there too, so uh-oh and we and those kinds of things. Then our next category here are going to be verbs, so common action words. And you know, kids need more than one kind of word when they're going to make a phrase. And so you always think, oh, they're finally talking. But now we've got to pay attention to make sure they have enough vocabulary then to be able to move on to that next level, which are, you know, in word combinations. So you've got to think about teaching some of these other kinds of words too. So verbs, I've got a great verb list here. Location words, so these are prepositions. Location words are a fixed category for us in early intervention because there's only going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I was going to say 6, but there's really about 8 that they master before 3. Up, down, in, out, off, on, here, and there. So if you think about kind of that little list, all those other beside, around, under, those actually come last or after this. So you're going to want to, you know, focus your first efforts on words that developmentally research has told us would actually come in first. Then our descriptive words, sometimes we start these too early in vocabulary development. Kids
You're
really,
so right.
Yeah, kids aren't really, you know, there yet. And then certainly our little early pronoun list, that's kind of fixed too. And so if you think, oh, my pronouns and my prepositions are kind of fixed little list, and then these other lists are where we have a lot of variability. So great kind of base to get you going with vocabulary development. All right, now we're up to the last stage, which is imitating phrases.
Woohoo!
I know. So short, easy phrase patterns. So let's run through some of those.
So developmentally, right, the average child would be doing this around 24 months.
No, the average child is doing it around 18 months.
Okay, you're right.
Yeah.
But the new milestone.
Okay, yeah, whatever. All right, so we know kids start to use phrases between 18 months and 24 months. 18 months is kind of the average here. 24 months is your latest time for average for when a child. And so, see, that's where a lot of, you know, even we as speech language pathologists, sometimes we hold our milestones in typical language with, okay, I want word combinations by 18 months. I want enough vocabulary by 18 months. But then we have our eligibility milestone, which is kind of that 24 months. We want to hear those combinations by then. But in typical language development, it's a lot earlier. Yeah.
So let's go through some of these easy phrase patterns.
Okay, you go ahead.
So the go-to for me would definitely be more, please, and then you can attach more to pretty much anything. I feel like that is great, and maybe it's because it's more of a request, but you can also think of this in saying bye-bye to a different noun or a name. Mine or me.
Huge for a toddler.
My stuffy, my passy, my baba, my mama, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's one of my first ones to get because it's so easy. You know, you just reach over and take whatever the child, you put your hand on whatever the child is holding and, you know, teasingly model that, you know, my choo-choo.
Yeah.
And, you know, if a kid is ready, he is going to pop it out.
That's right.
You know,
that's such a fun way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just move through, you know, can I put, and let me give you another hint about helping a child imitate phrases. Pick words that he already uses as single words.
That's right.
And so model those together and see if you can get that phrase imitation after that.
It's important to remember holistic phrases too.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, you know, I did it, I do it, I got it, oh no, no way.
Yeah, those kinds of things.
Where'd it go? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and those, again, holistic phrases are that a kid kind of learns that as one whole chunk, like sort of like we talked about back with verbal routines. But that's a great in-between step, a great backup place. So if you can't get a kid to imitate more cookies, more juice, bye-bye, dada, try some of these holistic things. You know, I got it, I did it, where'd it go, what's that? Those kinds of things that they sort of learn together. All right, so here's what I want to be sure that we talk about before we wrap up this show. Where do you start? Isn't that a question that you think about a lot? And Yeah, and I think about that a lot with too. It's where am I going to start with this kid? So let me give you a hint. You always start where the lowest level where a kid is
doing the most.
Yes. Or where let's just say where it's emerging.
Yeah.
So let's say, okay, let's take this example, and we'll go ahead and link this, and we're going to have a lot in the handout section today.
Let me write it down.
So this is from the Autism Workbook, and this is a way to really assess imitation. And if you're on my email list, and you can sign up for that at teachmetotalk.com and just go down to that green banner and pop your email in there. I give away these charts all the time. So you've probably gotten this. And so this is the best way to assess imitation. And I use a mastered, emerging, absent kind of thing to make it easy. So mastered, a kid does it all the time. So look at this little piece of paper that you're going to get when you buy your course credit or get your PDF handout. And it's going to give you some examples of ways that you can facilitate what all those levels were that we just went through. And so you think, oh, can this kid do it all the time? Well, that's mastered. Yeah. Emerging means that he just does, you can only think of a few little examples of that. He can do it, but it's not really strong yet. It's not really consistent. And then absent would be you've never heard it at all. Yeah. Yeah. And so when you start working with a child, when you were trying to pick out what you're going to do, you're going to start at the lowest level where they just have a couple of examples. So let me make this make sense in the context of a real life kid. So let's say that you just evaluated a toddler. Right. And he comes to you with, he can say mama and dada, and he can say moo and for a snake, and uh-oh and whee and oh boy. And then he can make a few little animal sound. Well, I already kind of said that. A few of those other little sounds. And so, but you're thinking, oh, and he might have one phrase. Yeah. He might say, I got it. And so you're looking at that and you say, where am I going to start with this kid with that? Look for, when you do your little assessment here, look for the very first level where you've checked emerging. Because for that kind of kid, that's where he's already trying to do it, and so that's going to be easier for you to start than, would you start with the kid there with one little phrase? No, because he's only got that one. Yes, it's emerging, but it's just one. That little guy also just had a couple of words that are highly familiar, so for that kid, and what you just said is true, I would have started with that kid back at play sounds to really, because that's where he's functioning. And,
well, then I would even back up and say, I would make sure gestures and body movements are there. Yeah. That's what I would do next, is I would say, okay, well, what about if you run across the room and it's like clear little social game. Is he going to run after? Or if I stick up my hand right now, will you give me a high five?
Yeah, exactly.
So I would make sure tell me about his play when you're playing on a little piano and you touch a key. Is he going to touch that key right back?
Exactly. So you're going to get great information just kind of looking at the chart and looking at where do his current skills lie? Where do they fall on this chart? And then that's going to tell you, am I ready to move up or do I need to move back? And
That's
so
right.
I think that's the beauty of kind of these tools and these frameworks. And lots of times as speech language pathologists, we know all of this theory, but we don't necessarily know how to fit it into everyday practice. And and you think when you're teaching a kid, especially as a parent watching, of course you're going to start with words when you're going to teach them how to talk. No, you're going to start at those easier, earlier levels. So the chart's going to give you that framework and that organization to be able to do that.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. We went way over our time once again.
Oh, once again, thank you so much. All right.
Thank you.
It never gets tired. I never get tired. It never gets old of talking about this stuff. And we hope that this information will help you move through that chart and really, really use it. And as a therapist, hopefully give you some better ways to explain this to parents so it makes a little more sense. And so they're going to stay working at the level where the child really needs so that he can be successful there. All right.
Well, thank you so much.
We appreciate it. I'm Laura Mize, pediatric speech language pathologist.
And I'm Macy Mize Usher, pediatric speech language pathologist.
And we hope you'll join us next time. Bye.